Lost and Found Beyond the Harbour, Chapter 1. The waves crashed against the hull, each threatening to capsize my small fishing boat. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the terror in my eyes. I clung to the wheel, muscles straining as the ocean roared around me. In the distance, the harbour lights flickered, a beacon of hope I might never reach. As the storm raged, my mind drifted to the letter crumpled in my pocket. The words echoed in my mind. "I'm sorry, Jack. I can't wait any longer." The wind carried the scent of salt and regret as I fought to keep my boat afloat. I had lost so much already. I couldn't bear to lose my life to the sea. Suddenly, a massive wave surged over the deck, knocking me off my feet. I tumbled into the icy waters, the cold shock stealing my breath. The storm seemed to swallow me whole as I struggled to the surface. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was the faint glow of the harbour lights fading into the distance. I could feel the cold water consuming my body as I tried to swim up. I couldn't summon the strength to get out. I looked down to see that something was watching me. Then I faded to black, feeling something warm touch my arm. When I thought I might have been dead, I felt a hand push on my chest. I looked up and saw I was in the middle of a town. I sat up and looked around to see that I was not even near a shoreline. There is no ocean in sight. I looked to see who was poking me in the chest. The man was of standard height, had brown hair, and looked mad I was here. I spotted a sword, armor, and medieval-looking helmet on him. I stood up and looked right at him, taller than him. He then asked me, "Sir, where do you hail from, and why are you sleeping in the middle of the city?" I looked at him and pulled out a lighter from my pocket. I found a cigar in my other pocket like I had on the ship. I then discovered my back pocket had my cutter in it. I cut the cigar and lit it in front of the man. I took a long drag and blew the smoke up in the air. "I'm not from this land, if that's what you're asking," I said to him, and he drew his sword. He pointed it at me and told me to turn around. I hesitated, and then I turned around. He placed shackles on my hands, then he pinned me to the wall, yelling, "Spy! We will not be fooled by your deception." He then hit me, and I turned around. "Hit me again, and I'll beat you with these chains," I said, getting into his face. I was trying to see if he'd hit me again. He seemed to wither in his pants until more men came over in the same suit of armor. These men were the policing force around here. They talked to the first guy, looking mad that I was there. "Sir, who are you?" a new man said, walking up to me. I looked at him and told him my first name. "My name is Jack, sir. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm not a spy," I said in a kind tone. The man looked at his friend and said, "We need to see your papers or guild card." He held out his hand. I pulled out my wallet and handed him my boating license. He looked at it and looked annoyed. "What's this?" "This is not what I asked," he said to me, and I shrugged, saying, "I have only that. I don't even know where I am." He grabbed me and pushed me to what I assumed was the jail. He told me I would stay in a cell until I told him what I was doing here. I kept telling him everything I knew, but didn't know anything. So they decided to keep me here just in case. I didn't know what that was. All I knew was that I was somewhere with people in strange clothes. The first night was difficult. The cigar was gone, the meal was bland, and it was cold all night. Then, I watched a woman with long ears walk in and use what looked like magic to light up the hallway. She waved her hand and lit all the crystals on the wall, acting like light bulbs. They glowed brightly. "My lady, where am I? I don't know why I'm in here," I said, and she looked at me for a moment. "They suspect you're a spy from the orc and vampire clans." She told me, and I looked away, confused about what she said. Orcs, vampires. Where the hell am I? I then looked back towards the woman and saw she was gone. I heard a noise behind me and saw a bar window. I jumped up to see people walking by. While most of the people who walked by were human, the others were straight out of a fairy tale. I saw dwarves, elves, and a couple of animal-looking people. I let go of the bar and I dropped to the ground. I sat on the rock-hard bed, looking at the cell door. I'm a 30-year-old man from the beachside crabbing company. I am an ex-military turned part-time chef. I worked as the ship's cook, earning whatever I could after my service was done. Now I'm here. I'm guessing this is another world. Much like the shows and comics I read as a younger man. This means there is magic or a system here, but that is what I'm used to. I looked around, and I found a guard outside my door. "Sir, can you explain to me how magic works again? I've lost my memories of how to use them. I bet if I can recall how to use it again, I can remember if I'm a spy or not," I said to the guard. They turned around to reveal an elf woman. "Sorry, miss, but could you?" I asked again, and she sighed. "Humans use the word magic, but some can use magic from within. If you close your eyes and start to feel the land's mana, magic will reveal itself to you." She told me and explained how this world's magic works. She even told me how the orcs used dark magic. Vampires used, ironically, blood magic. She stopped talking when a superior came in to interrogate me again. The person was a human man who dragged me into a room and sat me down in a chair. He asked me the same questions, like, "How old am I? And where am I from?" I answered the questions the same way every time. We did this for hours until his shift was over. I got set back in my cell with a cold meal again. I sat down on the bed and ate the food. I looked at the wall next to me and thought about how to use this world's magic systems. I waved my hand to see a screen floating in front of me. It read my name and skills. Magic was at the top of the list of skills. From what I saw, I have ice magic and earth magic. I didn't know what that meant, but I was going to find out. I also saw a skill that looked important since it was apart from my magic skills. It read, Iron Skin, from what I assumed I had hard-to-cut skin. I went to bed that night with a plan to get out of this place by force. So, I started to train myself to use my magic. I had a couple of conversations with the elven woman about magic. Then, after 2 weeks of trying to cast something, I unlocked my power. I could create things from ice and stone. So I waited for my chance to break out. In the dead of the night, when the elven woman took over for my other guard, I froze the hinges of the cell to break them. The elf saw the light of me casting my magic. She opened the door, and it fell to the ground. She looked up, and I froze her to where she stood. "Miss, I'm sorry, but I can't stay here anymore. I'm not a spy. I'm just Jack," I said, walking to the hall. She tried to use her fire magic to escape, but my ice wouldn't budge. She gave up, and I said goodbye as I ran to the door. The ice trapping the woman would only last a few minutes, so I had to make it to the edge of the city quickly. So I opened the door, and if I saw a guard in my way, I froze them to the ground or wall. I had a hard minute looking for a way out. Then I found the exit and saw how big the city was. I stretched a bit to take in the fresh air. I could smell a storm coming. Good. That might mask my escape a bit better, I said as I heard a bell ring and people yelling. I knew that was my leave, so I ran into the city. I jumped to a ladder and ran across the buildings, avoiding all the guards on the ground. I saw a couple of the archers looking up, and I'd shoot them with ice to the face. Not killing them, but taking them out. It only took about 10 minutes, and I saw the city's edge. I looked to the west to see a huge, dark forest. While in prison, I heard orcs and vampires were in that forest. I jumped to the ground and ran off towards the woods. Chapter 2. I ran to the forest's edge to see if I was being watched. I could feel my eyes on my back, and even feel they weren't human. Something in the air smelled like death and sweet flowers. I turned to see the humans who had captured me following me into the forest. I found a tall tree, climbed up, and watched them run by me. I smiled as they left my sight. But I stopped when I heard them cry out. I ran through the trees to see that everyone who came into the forest was killed. The scene was right out of a horror movie. I looked to see that elf woman who was kind to me, who I froze on the cell floor, was not among them. I shook my head, and then I jumped down. I grabbed a sword and what I could use. I then felt the eyes again. I turned to see 2 women watching me. One had pale, white skin, and the other was tall, with green skin. I turned around and fixed the sword belt on my pants. I nodded at them and began to walk into the forest more. The women looked at one another and smiled. They then rushed me, and I caught their attacks with my arm. "I'm not here to fight you, ladies. I'm here to get away from these lots," I said, gesturing to the bodies on the floor. They looked around and then asked me, "Why is a human running from humans?" the orc woman asked, and I told them. I was captured by them a couple of weeks ago. They think I'm a spy or something, but that's not true. They wouldn't let me go, so I let myself go. The 2 women grabbed me and then dragged me along. We are going to bring you to our leader. She'll know how to help you, the vampire woman said gently. I felt this wasn't going to be the case with humans, so I made these girls let me go. I walked with them instead of being dragged around. We trekked the woods for a few hours until we reached the huge city of tents and makeshift buildings. As we entered the city, I felt the same stares from before. I smiled at them as I walked on by. The orc woman, who I now know as Mila, told me what would happen to me. I'd be asked many questions and killed if they weren't satisfied with my answers. So, being honest with this general would benefit me rather than hurt me. After a few minutes of walking, we approached a building in the center. I entered the building to see an even taller orc woman than Mila standing behind a war map table. She was planning an attack on the human army approaching some kind of village. I looked at it and saw they were surrounded. I remember when I had to fight something like that. I shook my head and I almost fell to my knees. Mila and her vampire friend, Val, grabbed me before I fell hard. "Jack, are you okay?" Val asked me, and I nodded, telling her. "Sorry, I am tired. I've not rested well in a while," I told her, and she looked sad that I wasn't well. The leader of my two new friends looked at me with a raised brow. "Who are you, human? Why have my scouts brought you to me?" she asked. I stood up and went right to the table. "My name is Jack, and I'm originally not from this world. The only thing I remember was fishing near my home. Then a storm hit, and I fell off the boat into the icy cold water. Then I woke up in the middle of that human city. One thing led to another, and I got arrested and thrown in prison. I learned that I had magic powers and trained myself in prison to use them. Then I broke out, and I'm here now." I told her, and she looked at her scouts. At that moment, she was holding a stone tablet, which she set on the table. "So you fell into the water and appeared into this world before a great battle. Do you have battle experience? When you looked at the table, you noticed what's happening right away?" she asked, and I nodded to answer both questions. "I served in my world's Navy force. I also noticed that table since something like that happened when I was in a battle," I told her, and she smiled as she picked up the tablet again. "What should we do to prevent the humans from killing all of these innocent vampire villages?" she asked, and I felt my iron-like skin. "Send me in. I can take them out," I told her, and she looked at me like I was insane. I then felt Mila's hands grab my shoulders. "You'd help them, even if they're not your people?" Mila asked me, and I smiled. "I don't have people here. Mine are long gone. I also don't like bullies," I said, and Mila let go of my shoulders. "We need to set him upright, General," Mila said, and the lady behind the table nodded in agreement. "I'm General Opal. I'm one of 5 generals in this fight against the human empire. Princess Charlot is the general you'll be meeting with before reaching the vampire village on this map. We'd love to welcome you into our forces if you complete this job, or we can set you up with a nice place to live," she said, and I said to myself, "I'm 30 years old. Can I fight again? I might need to have a peaceful life once again." I looked at the sword on my side. "You ladies got anything better than this sword? I see it's not worth much," I asked, and Val pulled me to the armory. General Opal's point of view. "Do you think he'll help us, or will he run when he can?" one of my troops asked me, and I looked at the tablet. We didn't have the forces to stop that army from getting closer to that village. I'm all for it if a human is willing to take out his kind. That's when I saw Scout Mila speak up for the humans she brought in. "He's not like the others. He has power, and his skills from him blocking our attacks. He might be able to take on armies on his own. The fact is, he's one of those other worlds from the legends. He might even stop this war that's been plaguing us." I nodded my head, agreeing with her. I could tell he wasn't lying about being from another world. The gods of this world put him with his kind. But his kind betrayed him and imprisoned him for nothing. He might make a good ally for the battles to come. I thought to myself as he came back in. He was wearing light armor, holding a hammer and an axe on his back. This human had an older-looking helmet under his arm. The man looked like he was ready for a battle. He was looking at the hammer as he placed it on his back. Jack's point of view, I was in the armory, looking at everything they had in stock. Swords, axes, and hammers were on the walls and tables. I looked all over, but nothing was calling for me to grab. But then I saw a hammer on the far wall. It was made out of a weird metal. I then saw an axe next to it, made from the same metal. The axe head curved in front of the handle. I picked them both up and held them in each hand. I smiled at them and then decided to take them as my weapons. Mila was next to me and told me to pick out my armor. I saw a ruby-red suit of armor on the wall. It looked old, but it looked strong. Val, who was at the front of the armory, saw what I was looking at. This armor isn't used anymore because it stands out too much. I don't know if you'd like to stand out that much in battle, she said to me. I took the armor off the wall and put on the leather first. The leather was cold to the touch and light. Mila and Val left the room as I put on the armor. The metal was as light as the leather and seemed as weightless. I placed the axe on my back and stepped out of the room onto the street. Mila and Val smirked at the suit. You look nice, but people might stare at you with that on. I laughed when they told me that. We then went into the war room again. The general looked up from her tablet again to look at me. General Opal had a thought on her mind when she watched me place the hammer on my back. You're going with the force heading to the village in the southwest. Val and Mila, I want you both to be his escort to see Princess Charlotte at the village camp. General Opal told us, and I nodded, but the other two looked shocked they were coming with me. They bowed a bit, putting their arms across their chests. The general did the same thing, and I guessed it was for a salute. I bowed my head and headed back out of the war room. She said, Jack, I hope you can save those people. The humans of this world won't leave anything behind. Knowing how humankind can be, I felt the concern in her voice. I put on the helmet I randomly grabbed from the armory and headed to the villages. Chapter 3. Everyone, this will take us about 2 hours to get to the village. The leader of this small rescue party said. He looked at me and sighed. Kid, you need to go ahead and draw out anyone that might ambush us, he ordered, and I nodded, knowing that I needed the experience with the weapons. Everyone watched me run ahead to check out the route ahead. I knew Val and Mila were close. They were told to stay close. Plus, being scouts, they'd better be able to move as fast as me. I then felt a bit of mana overflowing a bit ahead of me. I trained myself to detect magic power, mana. I also knew my level from training myself in prison and got to level 52. That elven woman told me that most guards and veteran adventurers are around 50. So, I would be stronger than the average adventurer. With my skills, those are their levels, and my speed, strength, and stealth were above the level 50. The max seemed 100, but I'm unsure how everything works. But I could move faster and freer than in my old world. I could easily move around in the tree and avoid attacks. So, I took full advantage of my new skills, jumping through the trees like I was a ninja. Val and Mila followed me and stayed close. Then, as we followed the mana energy, I discovered where it was coming from. There was a squad of human men surrounding a troop of goblins. The green people looked scared and didn't have weapons. I felt the hair on my neck raise and my face got hot. Before I knew it, I moved to stop the humans from killing the goblins. I used my arms and pushed them all away. The humans looked at me as I pulled out the axe. They looked enraged that I stopped them. I looked at the goblins. They were just young kids. I took my axe and froze the squad in their place. I watched as Mila smashed it to pieces. I didn't feel sad for them, but smiled when the kids ran to Val. She told them to head to the city. They nodded, and we cleared more of the way to the village. I took down too many of the enemies, and I started to go back to the ex-soldier version of me. I was on top of the hill and saw the human army was getting ready for the attack. The group I was with arrived behind me. Mila and Val were next to me on either side. I looked at Val and asked, "Can you throw me into the front of the army defending the village?" She looked at me as I pointed at the Lady Knight holding a huge sword. Val nodded and casted a spell of wind to launch me. I flew through the air right to the woman as a large man approached her. The man was a human soldier about to attack her. I landed on him, eliminating him right in front of the villagers. The woman looked at me and saw my human face in the helmet. I nodded and turned to the attacking humans. I pulled out both of my weapons and ran to the force. The woman then watched me take out half of the humans in one magic spell. I raised a large ice wall and pushed it into the front attackers. I drifted into my old self, not caring about what I was fighting in front of me. I looked back to see the part that came with me fighting in the village. I watched as a kid was about to be taken out from a runaway horse. I saw this only, so I flashed over and stopped the horse. I looked back at the kid and saw she was a little demon child. I nodded and ran off to fight another group of enemies. The child watched me get faster and faster. This fight had helped me level up. I didn't know my level, but my magic began to strengthen then. We went through the front line, and I found the enemy's leader. I was staring right at him when my helmet got knocked off. Everyone stopped and looked at me. Seeing my human face fighting to help the village of monsters seemed unbelievable. Then I heard a human ask, "Why do you fight for these beasts?" The man asked, and I stared a hole through him. "They're not the ones attacking an innocent village, are they?" I asked him, and he looked past me. I raised my hand, and I punched him in the face with everything. The guy flew away into the crowd, and the fighting started again. I only kept the fighting away from the villagers. I was catching stray shots from the archers and blocking spears. I was doing well, but then I had to end the fight. The army began to kill a few of the people who came with me. I stopped and clapped my hands and brought a bunch of stone spikes out of the ground. I speared most of the enemy as the others dodged and retreated. I felt nothing again as I killed my race. These humans are much like the ones from my old world. They had no compassion for anything besides themselves. Val and Mila looked scared that it was easy for me to take a life. It was challenging for me. I just knew how to turn off my own compassion when in battle. I go into a place where I can only smell blood and smoke. I pulled myself out of that place and looked around. Many people lay on the ground all over the battlefield, many of the enemy, but you could see the orcs and vampires scattered. I looked over to the village entrance. There, the vampire woman who had been saved at the beginning of the battle was talking to Val and Mila. I walked over and introduced myself to her with a bow. "Hello, my lady. I'm Jack. General Opal sent me," I said, and she looked me up and down. "You're human. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But seeing you up close, I can see I was right. Why did you help us?" "We are not," she said, and I stopped her. "My lady, I don't care what you are. This village was in trouble, and you needed help. That's the only reason I needed to help you," I told her, and she looked back at Val and Mila. "You both said that you found him running away from the humans in the north. Why was he running from them?" she asked, and I shook my head and asked if we could talk in private after we helped the villagers. She nodded, and we all went to find and help injured villagers. I helped a few of the kids who had lost their parents. Val was with me as we found the kid I had saved in the middle of the battle. The little girl had me bend down, and she said, "Thank you, sir. Can you help me find my mama?" I smiled and held out my hand, and we went to find her mother. The little girl looked worried as we walked to the center. The princess saw us and waved me over. I brought the little girl with me, and we saw the tent of the injured. In the tent was a demon woman lying on a stretcher. She lost an arm, but she looked okay. I let the little girl go, and she ran to the woman. The woman opened her arm and hugged the little girl. She then yelled out, "Sister, where is Mama?" My heart sank in my chest. "Oh no," I said, looking at Princess Charlot. She looked away, not saying anything to me. Charlot didn't have to, since I could guess what happened. I walked over and looked over the woman. She looked at me and held her younger sister closer. She was scared of me, but the little demon girl pulled away. She told her sister that I saved her from the bad people. I smiled as I put my helmet on a table beside the stretcher. The woman looked at my face again. "Sir, what do you plan on doing that you've completed battle?" she asked me, and I told her that I didn't know. I was asked to do this mission for General Opal. Afterward, I didn't have anything planned. As I told her that, a battered and bruised woman was rushed into the tent. The medics laid the woman down, and a healer came to help. The glowing light coming from the medic's hand made me feel warm. The two girls next to me ran over to see the woman. The youngest was crying out, "Mama, are you okay, Mama?" I walked over and checked on the healer's effort. I heard one say, "We need more mana to heal her, but we don't have any potions to spare." I put my hand on their shoulders and poured my mana into them, increasing their healing power. We could see the magic physically healing the demon mother before us. Then the mother opened her eyes, and I let go. She looked at me, and then the woman looked at her kids. I had a relieved look on my face as I sat on the stretcher next to her. My energy was all but gone. Going over a day without sleep was going to end badly. I felt my eyes get tired and passed out in the tent. The next thing I knew, I was in a soft bed with the sun hitting my face. I opened my eyes to see Charlotte, Val, and Mila sitting beside the bed. I sat up and stretched, checking for broken bones or bruises. I didn't feel anything was wrong, so I got out of bed. The ladies beside me were still sleeping, so I got some air. This would mark my real moment being free in this world. I could hear the children's laughter and the adults' conversations. The village we saved the other day was built up like nothing had happened. After walking for a while, I found a bench. I sat down and watched the villagers for a bit. I felt something was off, like I had missed a lot. Then I saw the demon girl from before walking with her mother. They had flowers and something else in the girl's hand. They looked in my direction to see me sitting. The little girl let go of her mother and ran to me. The mother could only smile as I got hugged by the little girl. "Sir, you're finally awake. I was scared you weren't going to wake up," she said, letting go as her mother got closer. The mother looked at me and saw I looked worried about something. "Kid, you were sleeping for a month after that battle. Everyone was worried that you were going to die," she told me, and I shook my head. I had not slept that day, and was thrown into battle after I escaped the humans. I told her about coming from another world and being trapped for a month. She wondered how I could train enough to be as strong as I was with the magic. I lifted my hand and casted a ball of ice in it. I just kept asking the elven guard questions. She told me enough to learn on my own. I told her, and she nodded and sat down with me. I had a smile on my face as we talked. Then, the three I had left in the room I was in came running out. They looked over at me and came to scold me. That's when they saw the smile on my face. Val and Mila, though, started to yell at me. "How dare you just get up and leave without waking us? We feared you'd just vanish without saying anything, Jack," Val said, and I stopped smiling. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you girls that much. I just needed air, but after talking with this lady, I know now what happened to me," I said, getting up from the bench. "Oh, have we not introduced you to this woman and her kids yet?" Princess Charlotte asked, and I shook my head. "No." Then the mother demon came up and bowed her head. "My name is Mary. My youngest daughter here is called Lana. The second oldest you met at the battle is called Liana. My first child, whom you might meet, is named Trinity." Mary told me what she did to make a living in this world. She told me that she was a farmer who lived not too far from the village. She was here to sell crops for the end of the growing season when the humans attacked. I shook my head when she told me that. Then Mila asked, "What do you plan on doing now that you've finished your task?" I shrugged and asked, "Is there an adventure guild around or a place where I could build my new life?" I asked, and Mary jumped at me. "You need a place to stay. I have a place in my cabin you could use, and you could help us on the farm. It's not much, but it will keep you busy." She told me, and I took a second to think about it. Little Lana tugged at my shirt. "We need help. Big Sister Trinity can't do it alone. I'm too little, and Sister Liana is always helping Mama," she said to me with big sad eyes. I laughed. "Sure, a calm life as a farmer sounds like a nice life," I said, and Mary looked excited to hear me accept her offer. We all talked for a while, and then I was able to collect the armor and weapons I was given. I was brought to an inn before heading to the farm with Mary and little Lana. There, I had my first meal and slept until early morning. When I woke up, I could feel eyes watching me from the doorway. Lana was looking at me through the crack. I sat up and smiled at her, then put on my shirt and grabbed my heavy bag. I put it over my shoulder and went to the inn's dining room, where Lana and Mary were waiting for me. I set my bag down for a moment and stretched a bit. "Are you ready, Jack? We have a bit of distance to cover," Mary asked me, and I just smiled. We got up and went to the farm. Chapter 4. As we got closer to the farm, Lana began to tell me things about the farm. from the crops they grew to the big pet they had. From what she told me, the pet was a huge wingless dragon that helped plow the field. I wasn't concerned about the dragon, but I was worried about how Trinity would react to a newcomer. The fact that I was a human, she might have feared or hated me, and that was on the back of my mind. We came to a small wooden gate that said something. I couldn't read it since it wasn't in my language. I spotted Liana moving something heavy in the distance. She was struggling with it, so I ran over to help her. She felt the object get lighter to pick up and turned to see I was there. "Oh, human, I didn't expect to see you here," she said as her mother and little sister came over. I laughed, helping her carry the object to the barn. "Liana, this is Jack. He'll live in the old cabin near the fields. He'll also be helping Trinity with the field work," Mary said, showing her excitement about hiring me. I felt eyes watching me as I chatted with Liana. Someone was watching me from afar. "Trinity, come out and meet your new field worker. I promise he won't bite you," Mary said out of nowhere. I jumped a little, but watched as a darker version of Liana appeared before me. She looked angry. Then she turned to Mary. "Mother, why did you bring a human to our home?" "I thought that you were going to bring that man who saved Lana," she asked her mother, and Mary looked at me. "This man is the person who saved your sister. He came to our village under the orders of General Opal. His story is long and confusing, but this human is not like the ones we interact with." Trinity looked at my face a bit, and then she smirked. "Can you work the fields independently, or will I have to teach you?" she asked me, and I laughed. "I can work in the fields independently. I used to help my grandparents on their farm when I was a kid." I told her, and she told me to be up early. We had winter preparations to do before the snow fell. I nodded, letting her know I understood her. Mary then led me to where I was going to be living. It was a little shack about the size of a small apartment. It's the smallest one you could think of. I had one bedroom the size of a closet and had a wood stove with a table. It was little, but the place looked good. I had work to make it mine. But it was good enough for the time being. Mary tapped my shoulder and said, "Jack, we will have dinner after sunset. If you want some, be there on time." I nodded as she left me to my new home. Lana went with her, and I was left with only Liana watching me. She heard me take a huge sigh of relief. She left, and I went inside the shack. I saw there were a few holes to patch up, but my new home was warm and had a great farmland view. I set my heavy bag on my bed, which sank right through. I picked the bag back up and fixed the bed. Once it was fixed, I smiled and saw the sun setting. I went to meet with Mary at her place for dinner. Before I could even knock on the door, I heard little feet run up from behind me. Lana was with Trinity, carrying crops from their storage. Lana handed me a box, and I helped them bring it in. Trinity was still unhappy I was here, but she acted like she liked me in front of her little sister. When I entered the house, I saw how it was decorated. I thought I was in another village. Everything was clean and looked old. I saw a drawing of 4 people in a frame on the wall, a family picture of Mary and her kids. The man I assumed was her husband. Trinity looked sad when she saw it. I knew what that meant, so I went to the dining room with her. There, I saw a couple of big plates of dishes hot and ready to be eaten. Lana was excited about the food. We watched Mary come in, and she had everyone sit down. "I wanted to make something special for you. I didn't know what you'd like, so I made a couple of dishes," she told me, and I smiled. "I appreciate it, Mary. You didn't have to, though. I would have loved whatever you made," I said, and she smiled as I took some of the food. I took a bite, and it was nice and hot. The flavor was nice, and I ate everything I grabbed. Mary smiled as everyone grabbed their plates of food. We all ate the food together, and they told stories of when the girl's father was alive. Then, Mary asked me, "What did you do before coming to our world?" I was drinking some water, and I choked on it. "Well, let's see when I was a younger kid. I used to work on my grandparents' farm. I helped with chores and tended to the animals. Then, when I turned 18 years old, I joined my country's navy. I did secret missions and cooked for the ship I was on. Then, after retirement from the navy, I joined a crab-catching boat and did the same duties as a cook. That's about it, but the missions I did in the navy, those memories haven't gone. I sometimes feel like I am back in it when I close my eyes." I said, looking at the wall behind Mary. She looked sad, assuming my time in the Navy was a bad experience. Don't get me wrong, the soldiers I trained with and spent time with were good people. The things I had to do, that's what I have problems sleeping through, I said, getting up from the table. I stretched, and I said goodnight to everyone. Trinity watched me, and then she asked her mother something, but I had already closed the door behind me. I went home and went to bed, and I hit the pillow. The next morning, I got up right at dawn. I got dressed in the regular clothes left for me by the door. I looked in the drum of water to see my reflection. I had an unkempt beard and long hair, brown from my not being washed in some time. My eyes were brighter blue than they were back in my world. You could see a scar running down my left cheek. I wasn't a skinny man by all means, but I did slim down during my time in prison. I smiled at myself, then went out and checked what needed to be done. It was still early, and no one was up to show me around the farm. I decided to check out the dragon creature in the stable. When I saw him, I saw that the dragon was more like a horse. He was huge, almost too big for the stable. I walked up to him, and he stared at me. "Hello, fella. My name is Jack. Mary hired me as a hand for the farm. I hope we can be friends, and I promise I won't be a mean human." I said to the creature, and he nodded. I smiled as I saw his food was empty. I looked around and saw a container with some slop in the back of the stable. The dragon looked excited when I opened the container. "You want breakfast then?" I asked him, and he nodded again. I grabbed the bucket next to the box and filled it with the slop. I watched him eat it, and I went back outside. There, I saw the fields and fencing. I then went around to see if the fence needed fixing. What I saw was that a lot of it was broken. I clapped my hands together and touched it. All the posts and wires turned to stone as I used my earth magic to fix everything I could. It didn't look fancy, but the fence looked better. I even made it so that the gates worked like they should. This surprised me, since I didn't know I could even do that in the first place. Trinity was waking up and saw me working in the field already. She even saw that I had changed the fencing. She came out to see me looking at the soil. The dirt felt almost like sand in my hands. I shook my head in disappointment. I wonder if they fertilize this field or just keep planting. I asked myself what I could do to save the field. I thought back to when I was a kid helping my grandpa. "Sonny, you can help plants grow better by changing fields and letting the old ones rest for a season, but you need to have an area prepared for the next field," he told me, and I remembered seeing that he had several fields in my younger days. I smiled and looked over at the tree line about 20 yards away from this field. I wondered if Mary owned it. I bent down to feel the ground and felt it was better than the other field. "What are you looking at, Jack?" Trinity said, making me jump slightly as I looked at her. "Ah, I am looking at the dirt here. It's more fertile than that old field," I told her, showing her what I was talking about. She looked at me like I was talking nonsense. Then I brought her to the old field, and she felt dirt. "How is this dirt so different, even though they're that close to each other?" I shrugged, saying I didn't understand much about farming. But I did know that plants can stress fields if not cared for. She looked annoyed that I was blaming her, but I told her my plan. "I can expand the farm and make 2 more fields," I said, showing her a bit of my earth magic. She shook her head and told me not to overuse my magic power. I then asked if her family owned the land around the fence. She nodded yes, and I asked if I could fill in the fields. She sighed, "Yes, but you're responsible for them if the crops don't grow next season." She told me, and I smiled, running back to my cabin to get my axe. I came back out and cleared a bunch of trees. I took all of the lumber and brought it to my cabin. I was setting it on the back of my spot, and she was watching me, and I waved to her. She nodded and smiled back at me. I went back to the cleared part of the fields to be set. I felt the wind shift cold. I remember the winters in my world starting like this. This winter was going to be hard, so I went fast and made the fields to match the first one. I plowed the ground and built a fence around the fields to protect them. I then covered the original field with old hay and the manure from the dragon. Trinity wondered again why I did that, so I told her it would help recover the field back to healthy conditions. She thought I was crazy, but Trinity didn't say much. We worked in the fields until late that night. I felt my eyes get tired, so I took a break and sat on the fence. I looked out at what we had just done, and a smile came over my face. Trinity, who was in the field finishing up a corner, came over. "Why are you smiling like that? You seem suspicious when you do that," Trinity said to me, and I laughed under my breath. "I am thinking about what I have done in a short time." Stepping off the wall, I looked at the ground once more. I saw that it was fine, and I returned to the cabin. I watched Trinity go into the stables to feed the dragon. She saw he was already fed and came over to see what I would do with the wood I cut down. I looked over every log and knew what I could do with them. I decided to make furniture out of them and planks. I padded one, then I went inside the shack for a moment. I came back out and I started to make a chair. That took me the rest of the day. When I was done, I found a plate of food on the stack of lumber. I ate the food and set the finished chair out in front of the shack. I watched the sun go down from there. This isn't that bad. At first, imprisonment alone was bad, but I think I can make the most of this new life, I said to myself, looking over the tree to see if the sun had finally gone down. I went to bed that night, looking right out the window. I closed my eyes and slept off into a dream. What I was dreaming of was a woman dressed in gold. She was turned around, so I didn't see her face. But she said, "I'm sorry that my children had imprisoned you, Jack. You were meant to help them." The woman in gold said, and I laughed, "Ha, humans can't be trusted. They tend to destroy themselves by their sins," I said as the woman turned to look at me. "I've been watching you since you left the humans' prison. You seem at peace with the demons. Are you sure you want to be with them?" She asked me, and I nodded. "They treat me better than humans." I told her, and she smiled. "Maybe you can stop the humans from causing more war," she added, and I smirked before waking up. I rubbed my eyes and sat up. I got out of bed and headed for the door. I saw the sun rising just over the trees. I saw that Trinity was up and feeding the dragon. She turned to see me stretching before I got to work on the property. I had no problem clearing the broken branches. I had no problem fixing up the shrubs around the farm. I had trouble with the creek near the back of the farm. It was dirty and filled with old dead brush. I took my shirt off and spent the whole day cleaning it. I did this kind of thing for a month or so. I was cleaning the area and getting ready for the winter. I also fixed and expanded my shack and turned it into a nice little cabin for myself. I had dinner a couple of times with Mary and her family, 3 times a week. Otherwise, I hunted and made my meals. I didn't get paid a whole lot, but I didn't care at all. I had a roof over my head and a full belly. Life was good, and then, like every other day, the snow began to fall. I looked up and let the flakes hit my face. It was cold and refreshing, and then I heard something coming from the road. I looked up to see that the princess and Opal were coming. Chapter 5. 2 months of living with Mary and her family have been peaceful, from what I had before, being imprisoned. This was a wonderful life. Then I heard horses coming up the road from town. I looked to see that Opal and Princess Charlotte were on their way here. I looked at Mary and Leanna next to me. We were putting in a new swing chair for Mary. "I wonder why the princess and her scout are coming here?" Mary asked, looking worried about what this might turn into. I hoped it wasn't about them asking me to fight again. I set the seat down, and I headed to the front gate. Opal and Charlotte trotted to the gate and stopped by my feet. They looked at the farm and how clean it was now. "You've been busy, Sir Jack. Have you been well?" Princess Charlotte asked, and I watched her jump down next to me. Opal was getting off, but fell. I dashed over and caught her. She looked surprised and embarrassed that she almost got hurt. I set her on the ground and looked back at the princess. "I've been well. Mary has kept me busy with work," I said, looking back at the farm and all I've done with Trinity. "I'll get to the point then. We have orders to bring you with us. Queen Selena wants to meet the person who saved Moonshade from the human raid," she said, giving me the official order. Mary taught me the basics of this world's writing, so I could understand signs and guild work. We did that so that I could make money at the guild when the farm was slow in winter. "Why does she want to meet me?" I asked, and Opal looked away from the princess's glare. Someone told the Queen that you were the only reason we won that. Someone kept telling the guards that this hero was a captive of the attackers. Charlotte was telling me, and I started to laugh under my breath. Charlotte looked at me and said in a snappy tone, "Why are you smiling like that, Jack?" she asked me, and I shook my head. "I'm not upset and relieved. It's not you guys coming asking me to fight once more. When I saw you coming down, I thought that might be so." I told her, and Charlotte smirked. Then she told me I was expected to arrive at the Dragonius in a few days. I looked back at Mary, and she was bringing me my axe. I was informed about the Queen wanting to meet for a month now. I didn't expect that she'd summon you to her. Be respectful, and remember not to upset her. Dragonkin can be very temperamental. Mary told me as she went to get a change of clothes for me. What she gave me was new and fancy looking. I smiled at her when I grabbed both my axe and the clothes. "I'll be back and finish that fire pit near the creek," I told her, and she patted my head. "You just focus on this trip, friend, and I'll wait for your return." Mary told me, and I blushed as I put the axe on my back. I then left with Opal and Charlot. We were heading into town first. We had to pick up some supplies. I didn't get much, but I did buy a new knife. I put that on my side and got on a horse. I had never ridden a horse before, so I had trouble at first. Then, after a day of traveling, I got used to it. I watched the scenery around me as we crossed into a field of golden wheat. You could smell the cool air starting to get warmer. "Where are we going again, Princess?" I asked Charlot, and she sighed with disappointment. "We are going to the kingdom of Dragonius, the kingdom of dragons," she told me, and I wondered how dragon-like they would be. They are more human-like than dragon-like, but their ancestry and people are like dragons. So be kind, and don't upset them because they are no less powerful than their monstrous cousins. Charlot told me. I smiled, taking a bit of jerky from my pack. "I'll be fine. I don't start fights deliberately, but I won't let people disrespect me because they are stronger," I said, swallowing the piece of meat. As we traveled for a day, we stopped at a campsite about half a day from the Kingdom of Dragons. Opal set up her tent, and Charlotte did too. I set myself up under a tree, and I rested on it. I watched as other travelers stopped to rest with us. A bunch of them noticed me with the princess and Opal. That's when I felt the glares from a few of the orc people. Opal saw this and said it out loud for everyone to hear. "Sir Jack, when you meet the Queen, she will ask you how much stronger you've become since you saved Moonshade. By the way, have you been training since that battle?" she asked me, and I nodded. "Every other day when I had nothing to do. I'm twice as strong as I was 2 months ago." I told her she didn't look surprised I'd train, even after settling down on the farm. Some of the people around us knew about the battle at Moonshade. I heard a human betrayed his kind and helped save that town. Never thought he would look so ordinary. One of the orcs said, looking me up and down. I smiled as I took off my coat, unintentionally showing off the muscle I put on. I had a bit of muscle from training in the military. After I retired, I stopped training and gained a bit of weight. I was in prison for 2 months, then joined Mary on the farm after my escape. I gained that muscle back and lost all that weight. Everyone seemed to be surprised that I was hiding a physique like this. My clothes weren't baggy, but they were not tight either. I saw Opal and Charlotte were staring at me. I smiled, then napped, while everyone found their spots around us. After 3 hours, I was woken up by Opal kicking my feet. "Eat something, Jack. You can't last just on dried meat," she said, handing me a bowl of soup. I took it from her and drank it all. I saw that Charlotte was by a fire pit talking to someone. I got up, dusted my pants off, and went by her. Sitting right down beside her, I saw everyone smoking something. "That smells familiar. What is that?" I asked one of the orc men next to me. He looked at me and told me it was the flat leaf. He showed me what it was, and I realized what it was. It was this world's tobacco. I took a couple of the larger leaves that weren't crushed up. I rolled them into a nice cigar and aged them with my ice magic. The man beside me looked at it like I had just made something amazing. I cut one end and put the clipping in my pocket. I then took a stick that was on fire and lit the cigar. I took in a long drag of the cigar and cried a little bit. The orc man thought I was crazy. "My friend, why are you crying? Why does this leaf make you sad?" he asked, and everyone seemed to want to know too. I sighed, holding the cigar in my hand. My world, the one I came from, we have this leaf. Most of my family smokes it, and the smell makes me think of them. I guess I'm feeling homesick. The orc man nodded and told me he understood my pain. We orcs understand what that's like, Sir Jack. We were driven from our homes 40 years ago. The humans came by the tens of thousands. They only wanted our lumber and stone. But they lied and took everything instead. The man said, getting angry with each word he spoke. I grabbed his shoulder, and I made him a cigar like mine. They captured me and kept me in prison for months. I didn't do anything but appear to this world. The humans here suck. I'm not like them. I believe in understanding. I told him, and the orc tried my cigar. Ah, this is a fun way to smoke this leaf. Human, were you afraid of the non-humans when you found Miss Opal or her scouts? The orc asked, and I shrugged. In a second, I met Miss Val and Lady Myla. I was. But then I saw they saved me from my procurers. I felt they understood my situation till Myla attacked me and couldn't cut me. I said, showing the orc my arm. He touched it and felt it was as hard as iron. You're stronger than Myla? The orc asked me, and I shrugged. My skill iron skin never stops, so I can't get cut that easily, I said, showing him how hard my skin was. I bent an arrowhead on my arm. Princess Charlotte said you had trained a bit after that battle. Has that had an effect? The guy asked me, and I showed him my magic screen skills. Ah, Princess, this says he is on the same level as the Dragon Queen's eldest son. His strength alone is at the same level as Captain Lard's, he said, looking over to Charlotte. She saw my level and spit out her drink. She thought that my levels were wrong, but she looked at them more and saw my title. The Reaper is a title given to those who kill their kind with no remorse. I didn't pay attention to the title at all. Several of them appeared on that after the battle, one for farming and a couple for mastering my magic. I talked to this orc for a long time before he told me his name. The orc was called Roy, a bounty hunter looking for human mercs. They have been attacking passers going to the Dragon Kingdom. I went to bed that night under the stars with one eye open. When I woke up, I could feel the sun hitting my face. I yawned, got up, and used my ice magic to make some clean water. I drank the water and then waited for the girls to get up. I saw Roy was up and brought me a bag of the flat leaf. Here, my friend, I had a nice conversation last night. I brought you these so you can make more of those sticks, he told me, and I smiled, grabbing a hold of the bag. These will do nicely. After they age properly, they'll even improve. Come visit me in Moonshade when you're done hunting, and we'll smoke a couple. I said back to him, and he smiled and nodded before he left. Opal and Charlotte finally woke up and came over to me. They saw the flat leaf bag in my hand. Opal crossed her arms as I put it in my pack. I grabbed my axe, and we headed to the Kingdom of Dragons. I could feel something was off, but I wasn't sure what it was. Then we came to the front gate of the city. The gate had dragon-like people guarding the front. They had scales and a large tail behind them. Their eyes scared me a bit, but I stayed on the horse. They all looked at Charlotte and bowed their heads. They saw Opal and saluted, but when they saw me, they got different with me, holding spears and swords at me. I smiled and said, I'm here under Queen Selina's order. My name is Jack, and Princess Charlotte and General Opal are escorting me. I said, saluting them like they did Opal. They hesitated, but let me go on with the girls. I could see the glares from them as I passed on. I could see all the other races in this world were all over this city. But the more we rode into the center, the more I saw the dragonkin. Then we came to the castle in the highest part of the city. It overlooked the city with a large white tower. It looked like the cliff was made as a landing zone. The guards at the castle gate stopped us and held swords at me. The horse I had been riding knocked me off and ran away. I landed on my feet and looked right at the guards. You are going after my horse, or will you let it hurt someone? I said sternly, and they waved for someone to chase down my ride. The guards didn't say anything till a big dragonkin guard came forward. He was about a foot taller than I am. His eyes were red and scales as black as night. He told me to open my magic skill screen. I showed him it, and he read my name. Jack Han, 30 years old, magic is ice and earth, magic skill is iron skin. Oh, here it says you're at the same level as I am. The man said kindly that he would let me put it away. He then offered his hand for me to shake. I'm Lars Drago, Prince of Dragonius, and it's a pleasure to meet Moonshade's hero, he said as I shook his hand. It's a pleasure also to meet you. General Opal said this summons was important, so I left my calm farming life for this journey. I told him, and I was brought to a waiting room in the castle. Opal and Charlot went off to do official stuff. I was left alone, with maids and a butler, who didn't like me very much. I sat in a chair near the window, looking over the colourful garden. I watched a dragon girl cross the garden to the door near me. She turned and looked at me. You must be the hero of Moonshade, she asked me, and I laughed, standing up. Hero, maybe, but my name is Jack. It's a pleasure, miss, I said, bowing my head to her. She stopped me and told me to follow her. We went out, and she started asking me questions. Nothing annoying, but she asked a few personal ones. So, you have a wife in Moonshade? What level are you? And also, why are you not with the other humans? I smiled and told her, no wife if you're talking about the mother I work for on her farm. She's just my landlord of sorts. My level is the same as Prince Lars, the last question. Humans imprisoned me for appearing in this world. I looked out to the city and saw a child playing with their parents. How long were you in there for? The woman asked me, and I shook my head. I was there for 2 months, but it felt longer than that. I learned how to use my magic in there, I said, and the woman was shocked to hear that. Wow, you taught yourself how to use your magic. How did you manage that, not knowing how to use it in the first place? Lady asked me, and I laughed a bit. An elven woman told me how magic worked. She was my night guard who watched over my cell. She was kind, but she wasn't bright, not catching on to what I was doing, I told the lady, and she stopped moving momentarily. You didn't kill her, did you? She asked, and I shook my head. No, I told her, and then I froze her to the floor. The lady looked relieved. Oh, my name is Sanya. I'm the second princess and sister of the current queen. She said right before we reached the throne room. I opened the door and went in first. I saw that Opal and Princess Charlot stood there with many noble-looking people. They stood on either side of a black rug leading to the throne. I then saw a tall, black-scaled woman with golden eyes and a large tail. She was about the same height as Prince Lars. My lady, I'm Jack. Is it wonderful to meet you? I said, bowing my head to the woman. She stepped down from the throne and walked to me. I felt my body wanting to run, but I stayed right where I was. The queen got close and looked into my eyes. Ah, I see fear in your eyes. Are you scared of me, Sir Jack? She said, backing up. I collected myself and said back. No, ma'am, I'm just slightly intimidated by all this. I've not seen dragonkins yet, so you and your kingdom here are overwhelming. I watched them look at me and smile. You haven't seen my kind before. Did my son behave himself when he met you at the gate? She asked, and I nodded as I saw Lars popping up by the throne. He nodded at me, and I smiled. Then I looked at Princess Sanya. She was stone-faced, not watching us. Selena saw me look at her sister, and she smiled again. I see we've given off a good impression when you arrived, she said, and I didn't agree. The guards all held spears and swords at me when they saw me. I understand why, but they should have known a human was coming, I said, and she looked mad but not at me. Lars, didn't you tell the guards that Sir Jack was coming and that he's to be welcomed with open arms? She asked, and Lars said back to his mother. I was going to, but something came up, and I forgot, he said, and Queen Selena looked annoyed. She then turned to me and got to her reason for summoning me here. We came to her as she sat down. Jack, you were the reason Moonshade was saved. That town supplies most of the demon lords of the Alliance with food and lumber. Without that town, we'd be in trouble with this war the humans brought upon us. She took a second, and I watched her get serious momentarily. I summoned you here to give you your rewards. First, you will get 1,000 gold coins from my chest. Second, today you'll be known as Lord Jack Han. Third, you can choose a treat of your choice to enjoy. She showed me the chest and an assortment of goodies on a table. These gifts are a lot, my lady. Are you sure you want to give me all of this? I asked her, and she nodded. You saved more lives than you realize, Lord Jack. These gifts are a gesture of goodwill. Now, what treat do you want from this table? She asked, and I looked all over for anything I recognized. I then saw a box of seeds with the flat leaf image. I grabbed it and looked inside to see what I had in my hand. "I'll take these seeds then. I'll make something nice with these," I said, and Queen Selina nodded as she turned to everyone. "I will now complete the knighting of Jack Han. Please, Lord Jack, let go back over to the chair," Queen Selina said, pulling me over. She then grabbed a sword. She brought it over my head and touched both sides of my shoulders. "I, at this moment, am now officially knighting you on behalf of the Dragonius Kingdom." Queen Selina looked over to 3 people watching us. They had crowns and were dressed in formal wear, rivaling Selina. "We will also be knighting you under the Demon Lord's Alliance. We all recognize the good you have done for this table. I expect you to honor this reward by doing your best as a farmer." The lady in black said, walking up to me with the other 2. "I'm Queen Lily, the acting ruler of the vampires. These 2 on either side of me are the King of the Beastmen and the King of the Orcs," Queen Lily said as the other 2 kings introduced themselves to me. "I am Leon, King of the Beastmen. The sour-looking man next to Lily is King Mitad," the man said, smiling at me, and I held my hand to him. "I'm Jack Han. Meeting you all is a pleasure. I don't feel like this is all necessary, but I'll accept this with the chance to do good," I said, and everyone seemed to like what I said. I looked at Opal and Princess Sharla. I know I'm human. I'm not the ideal person to trust, but since I set myself free and joined Miss Mary and her kids at the farm, my life has been peaceful. If you need my strength in battle again in the future, I'll be there. I'll do anything to repay your kindness," I said to everyone looking at me. I even bowed my head with a tear rolling down my face. Queen Selina looked at me and raised my head. "Lord Jack, if you need anything from us, ask me. Protect that town and keep doing what you're doing. Maybe one day you'll be known not for being a human who saved Moonshade, but for being the man everyone wished they could be," she said to me. I whipped my face and stood up straight. The 3 next to me then grabbed my shoulder and told me, "Kid, you're going to be a good part of our world. As Selina said, you can ask us if you need anything from us," King Mitad said as he turned me to the crowd. I felt embarrassed momentarily, but then I saw that Princess Sanya was now watching me. I blushed a bit, looking right at her eyes. She had black scales like her sister, Queen Selina, but she had a bit of white and purple scales around her face and the edge of her tail. Her eyes were not like Queen Selina's. She had 2 different colored eyes. One eye was gold, and the other was blue like the ocean. I stared at her for a moment, until Queen Selina clapped her hands. "Ceremony is over. Please stay for dinner or rest at the inn. We have prepared entertainment in the garden tomorrow night, so enjoy yourselves and take it easy until you all leave for home," Queen Selina said as I left the room. I went over to a bench and sat by myself for a while. I looked up and saw that rain clouds began to form over the castle. "Oh, a good rainfall is about to start," I said, finding a way out to the garden to watch the rain. When I got out, I saw a spot under a gazebo. I walked over and sat in one of the chairs. I then pulled out a pre-rolled cigar that I had made. I was about to use a magic stone to light it when I saw Sanya. I saw she looked upset about something. She looked over at the gazebo. I was in and walked over. "Why are you over here in the rain, Lord Jack?" she asked me, and I smiled, lighting my cigar. "I'm smoking some flat leaf away from all that," I said, pointing at the party going on for me. She looked back to see that people were all talking. "You don't like being around people?" she asked, and I smiled again. "It's not that. I just needed a bit of space. I don't normally get that much attention. I am usually the person in the background. Would you care to sit and enjoy the weather with me?" I asked her, and she sat across from me. She looked me up and down, then she said, "Lord Jack, what's life like on that farm? Are you eating well and keeping busy?" She asked me, and I stopped smoking my cigar. I made an ashtray from a stone from the ground. I set the cigar down, and then I told her, "I get by fine. Miss Trinity Mary's oldest daughter keeps me busy with chores, but some days I miss my younger brother." I said to her that Sanya looked curious about my brother. "Was he important?" "Do you seem to have regrets about something?" she asked, and I nodded. "I left home years ago and never returned. The last thing I remember telling him was where I moved to." I told her, and she looked away to hear thunder in the distance. The hair on my neck stood up for a moment. Sanya saw that and asked another question. What type of wars did you fight in? I sighed. Not wars. I am more involved with secret missions. We were taking our bad guys with a small group of soldiers. Some nights, we'd be deep into enemy territory. Hearing shots go over my head and bombs every 10 minutes took a toll on my sanity. I killed a lot of people for my country. I retired after being forced to clear. I stopped talking and paused to take a puff of my dying cigar. I was forced to take out a building where a war criminal was hiding. But what I destroyed was a place filled with sick and dying people. I stopped again and saw she didn't like this story. I retired and went to work on a fishing ship. I spent 3 years avoiding real life. I looked at her, and she asked about my brother again. Did you avoid talking to your brother because of that? I shook my head. No, I said to her. I couldn't cope with the memories, and I sometimes have nightmares about what I did. I couldn't explain what that does to someone like me. She grabbed my free hand and looked me in the eyes. Is that why you don't see yourself as a hero? She asked, and I nodded. Yeah, how could I see myself as a hero when I've done something like that? She said. You couldn't have known your work would lead to that. Now look where you are, and what you've done here. From what Princess Charlotte told me, you are a hero. You saved countless lives in that battle in Moonshade. You can't dwell on that feeling anymore. You now have responsibilities in this new world. She told me, and I looked at her like she was insane. What's my responsibility now? I asked her, and she said, spreading kindness and compassion. From what Charlot says, that's what you're good at doing. I nodded and laughed as I took another drag of the cigar. That night, I left and headed to the inn for some rest. From there, I waited until it was time to head home. When I woke up that next morning, Princess Sanya and her uncle met me at the city front gate. Prince Lars said his goodbyes to me and my escorts, and then we left. I turned to see that Sanya was watching from the gate. I don't know how long we have watched each other, but I felt something building. Chapter 6. I returned home after being away for almost a week. I saw that Trinity was working on something. She was making a place for the dragon horse to run around in. I smiled as I set my bag down to stretch. Being on the road all this time was painful on the back. Mary, who was just coming out of the house, saw me. She then asked, Jack, how was the trip? Did you get to talk to the Queen? Trinity and her sisters all came to see me through the gate. I waited until Mary joined us and told them about the knighting. I also told them about meeting the Queen's son and younger sister. I paused for a moment to think about the dragon girl. Mary seemed to grin when she saw me smile. Did you talk to Princess Sanya during your time there? She asked, and I nodded, telling her enough so she'd leave it be. She then clapped her hands and had me rest in my cabin before dinner. When I got in, I lay on my bed and passed out. After what seemed hours later, I woke up to Mary in my cabin, putting food on my table. She looked tired from cooking, so I got up and made her jump. Oh, did I wake you up, dear? She asked me, and I shook my head. No. Then I grabbed the plate of food. Mary said, Good night, Jack. I hope you get more rest. She then left and headed back to her house. I ate the food and sat in my chair for a few hours, making cigars from Roy's bag. I then went back to bed and slept until the sun hit my face from the window. I got up and dressed. I saw that the snow from last night had covered everything. I felt the air cold, but it didn't bother me. I then made that fire pit, which I promised Mary, and fixed the swing seat, all before everyone woke up. I then felt eyes watching me from the window. I looked up and saw Trinity watching me like she always did. You can come out and say good morning, I said to her. She smirked and came out. She sat on the swing to test it out. It swung back, and she acted like she was going to fall. I laughed and sat with her. I slowly kicked to get it swinging a bit. Trinity started to calm down. Then I felt my stomach growl. You hungry, Trinity? I asked her, and she nodded. You're going to make breakfast for us this time? She asked me, and I told her to grab a few things. She went to the food storage and grabbed eggs, meat, and bread. I then went into the house and started the wood stove. I have never cooked for Mary and her girls yet. Breakfast would be a good start to show them I can cook. I got the fire nice and hot and grabbed a bit of oil as Trinity brought me the food. I looked at the meat and saw it was like bacon. I cut it and fried it up like I would for my sailors. I used a bit of the seasoning Mary had, but I ran to my cabin and grabbed the personal stash I had collected from town. I then made a quiche from the eggs and added the bacon. I then set it in the oven to warm up and cook through. I then sliced the bread and toasted it with garlic. Trinity was watching and smelled the air. Mother is going to like this, I know. Little Lana will love your cooking. She's wanted to taste your cooking for months, she said, and I smiled as I set the table. Mary woke up from the smell and came to see who was cooking. Jack, you're making breakfast. Why? She asked, looking at the dish I had made. Well, you looked tired last night, so I decided to help with the cooking. You know I used to cook for sailors in my old life, I told her, and she sat down. I made her a plate, and Lana came out rubbing her eyes. What's for breakfast, Mama? She asked, seeing something new on the table. Jack made breakfast for us this morning. Come eat, dear, she told her, and Lana got excited and took a huge bite of the quiche. Normally, that egg dish is dry and flavorless, but I make it differently than other cooks. The look on Lana's face made me laugh. She squealed like a pig and then ate her plate. She then tried the bread, which looked like she'd never had food. That's when Mary had her portion of food and smiled. You can cook. I would love it if you made dinner tonight if you're not busy today, she requested, and I nodded. I can if you'd like. I planned on going into town to get a few things, but I should be back before lunch. I told her when Liana came in for breakfast. She had trouble getting the chair out from under the table. She only has one arm. I helped her out and gave her a plate. You made this? She asked as she was the reaction of sisters and mother. I nodded. She took a bite and acted like Lana. I looked at Trinity and she seemed to be in another world. After the meal, I cleaned up and headed into town with Liana. Liana wanted to get out of the house. She couldn't help much with having one arm, so she often sat around and asked me questions about my trip as we walked. I told her more about the journey to the city. I told her about the conversation I had had with Princess Sanya. Liana looked at me and asked, Do you miss your brother? Do you regret not saying something to him while you were away? I smiled and sighed. Yes, every day I think of him and the family I've left behind. But there is nothing I can do about it now. They would hate seeing me dwelling on that, so I live how they expect me. I told Liana, nudged my side, and told me not to worry too much, that I've made them proud even if they don't know what I'm up to. I nodded, agreeing with her. Then I looked up to see the gate of the town. The town's guard saw us and welcomed me in. Lord Jack, please come right in. Princess Charlotte is at the Guildhall if you need work this winter. The closet guard said to me, and I nodded, walking to the town centre. The guild was there, and I went to see what Charlotte wanted. She had the guards say that to get my attention. As we entered the building, I saw that the job board was covered in requests. I looked at Liana. She sighed and said, She might need help with those. What do you think, friend? Liana said, and I looked at their type of request. Most of them were building requests, but the most dangerous ones were hunting quests. I looked around, and I saw Princess Charlotte's office. I had Liana stay back, and I went into the office. Charlotte was writing something in a notebook when I came in. Oh, Lord Jack, good to see you here, friend, she said in a sweet tone. I gave her a funny look and walked over to her. You want me to join the guild, don't you? I asked her, and she tried to play dumb, but I smiled. Oh yes, but more of you helping me take over some of the duties here in town. I do so much that I miss a lot of the small things. The guilds are one of the duties I take care of, but lately it's been hard to train new adventurers to take on the hunting requests, she said. I looked at her and waited for the reason for this request. She told me how the town counts on the guild to feed them throughout the winter months. I sighed and looked out to see Liana at the armor displays in the lobby. I can help with training and hunt down the requests until we get the help. But I want to gain access to research on magic items. I want to see if I can help Liana with her problem. I said to Charlotte, and she nodded, agreeing to my proposal. I smiled, and Charlotte stood up and gave me a book on magic armor. We then went to the lobby, and I grabbed a few quests from the job board. Most of them were hunting jobs that needed to be done, but the rest were building jobs. I looked at Liana, and she wondered why I had grabbed the requests. I told her what Princess wanted from me. She needed your help with some of her duties. It makes sense. A couple of the town builders and hunters died in the conflict, she told me, and I felt my heart flutter a bit. We went outside and completed my errands. I got a new axe for woodcutting and a few carpenter tools for home. Then, I walked past a stand with clothing on the racks. I grabbed a few new shirts and pants in my size. Then we headed back to the farm with my new stuff. I watched Liana go into the house, and then I returned home. I looked at the requests and prepped for the next few hunting days. I made a wagon to help me move the kills and a new bow from the logs and dried branches. I hunted all I could for 2 weeks until Princess Charlotte said I had hunted enough. I wasn't as tired as I should have been. I felt like I was doing something useful again. I even fixed some of the villagers' homes. They still had damage from the battle all those months ago. Winter was going smoothly, colder than I was expecting. One day, I was on my way to visit Charlotte at the guild. She met me at the gate leading to the farm. "Oh, were you going to the office or grabbing more guild posters?" she asked me, and I laughed, setting my axe on the ground and holding it like a walking staff. "Yes, I was going to see if you needed more food for this cold spell," I said, and she shook her head. "No." Then she told me that there was another summons from Queen Selena. I looked at my axe and put it over my shoulder. "What does she want now?" I asked, and she sighed. "She needs you to go with Princess Sonia to a peace treaty in a neutral city a few days from here." Charlotte said, "I'm considered the lord of this town. Since the humans attacked this place, I was obligated to attend the treaty." I shook my head. "Okay, am I going by myself, or are you going with me, my dear?" I asked her, and she blushed a bit. "No, but I have a couple of scouts acting as your bodyguards," Charlotte said, and I smiled. "I haven't seen those two since they left after the battle." "Are they doing well?" I asked Charlotte, and she looked at the guild's direction. "Go and ask them yourself, Jack. They are waiting to go when you are," Charlotte said, and I sighed again. "I'm going back and get my bag for this new trip. Can you have them ready in a couple of hours, please?" I asked, and Charlotte nodded, running back to the farm. As I got home, Trinity saw my eyes. I wasn't happy. I was upset that my calm life was about to be interrupted again. She met me by my cabin and smirked. "Queenie asked for help again. What's it this time, Jack?" She asked me, and I told her. "I'm going to a treaty in some city, a 3-day ride from here. From what Charlotte said, I'm the unofficial lord of this land, so my appearance is expected, so I'm getting ready for this possible fight." I said, packing what I could, nice clothes, and a short sword I could hide under my coat. Trinity shook her head in disappointment. "Are you getting guards, or are you going alone?" she asked me, and I told her that Mila and Val would accompany me. She remembered those names from my stories about when they saved me. "Are you relieved that they're going with you?" she asked, and I shrugged. "I've not seen them since that battle months ago, but I'm happy I know who will have my back," I said, and Trinity asked, "Do you like one of them? Or are they just friends?" I laughed and threw my bag over my shoulder. "Friends, we are friends and war buddies. Don't get me wrong, a man or woman would be set for life with one of those two, but I see them as only friends, for now," I told her, and she said under her breath, "Yeah, sure, the women around you are something else." I left the farm an hour after that, saying goodbye. Mary looked sad I was leaving again. "Make sure you don't start any fight, Jack. Could bring something nice from the gate too." Mary asked me, and I laughed, nodding to her request. "I'll bring something made of gold then. Stay warm and keep an eye on the left field." I made it to the guild with my bag on my back and my sword hidden under my coat. Val and Mila were waiting for me at the door. Val was talking to Mila and saw me walk up. "Lord Jack, you've changed. Have you been training?" Val asked me, and I nodded. "I've been working on the farm too. That has let me use my magic more daily." Val looked at Mila and handed her a silver coin. I laughed, knowing what that was about. "I knew you wouldn't get complacent, sir. You're not the type to rest long," Mila said, picking up her bag as a carriage came up. "We are to meet with Princess Sanya and Queen Selena. Then we will head over to Nithelhelm in the northeast." Val said to me, handing me the summons from Queen Selena. I looked at the letter momentarily and then placed it in my coat. We then got into the ride. We then sped off to Dragonius, going faster than on regular horses. Val and Mila were across from me. They watched me as I grabbed a cigar roll from my bag. "You make a lot of those?" Val asked me, and I nodded. "A friend I made during my first trip to the Dragon Kingdom gave me a huge bag of flat leaves, so I started to make a bunch of these," I told her, and she had me show her how I made them. I gave one to her, and she looked at it. "King Jean likes flat feel, and he might enjoy this," Val told me, and I showed her the box of cigars. "Is he Queen Selena's husband?" I asked, and she nodded, telling me he wasn't at the coronation for my knighting because he was overseas with Queen Lilith. They were working on a treaty with the Emperor on that side. Val told me that there are about 5 continents in this world. 2 are polar, and the others are tropical and filled with forests. I wasn't surprised that there was more land. In my world, we had 7 large land masses like the ones here. The girls then started asking me about my training regimen. I told them what I did when I had downtime. Step 1. I go to my homemade training ground in the forest every night. I start my workout with heavy swings and a bow staff made from poured iron. The weight of the staff was heavier than my axe and sword combined. When I got used to the weight, I'd add more iron. After that, I'd do 100 laps around the training grounds. Then, 200 setups with added weight. Then, I'd do magic training with a dummy I made. I'd learned to control magic to a degree where I could only freeze the water in a cup, not the cup itself. The earth magic, I could mold stone, dirt, and anything earth-based into what I want. I would repeat that daily and change my routine once I got used to it. Mila thought my training was light, but Val looked impressed that I could use my magic even this advanced. I couldn't explain how easy it was, but learning this world's magic seemed natural to me, like breathing. We sat for hours talking about my calm life on the farm, but after all the catching up, we needed more topics. That's when Val asked me, "Are you excited to see Queen Selena again?" I looked at her from the window. From what I've seen so far, she's a wonderful person, but she's not the one that draws my attention. I told her, and Mila nudged Val. "Let me guess, you are interested in Princess Sanya?" I blushed a bit and remembered that I was not a child. "Yeah, I wanted to talk to her more. I never got the chance to ask her questions," I said, with both girls looking at each other. "What draws you to her?" Val asked me, and I shook my head. "She reminds me of a character from one of my stories," I told her, and she then asked what the story was about. I smiled, sitting back in my seat. "It's about a young princess falling in love with a peasant. Their family tried to separate them, but they ran away together. The princess in the story is like Sanya, but she is more like a lizard." I looked away and out the window, wondering if I should get to know Sanya better. She was kind to me, but I didn't know much about her. The only thing I knew was that she was interested in my story. She seemed reserved around other people, but excited when asked about my life. It was like she was hiding her true self behind a calm facade. Why was she hiding from who she was? Is there something behind the scenes that I'm not seeing? I thought about it until we visited the same campsite area as last time. We didn't stay long, just enough to stretch our legs and get some fresh air. I got a chance to smoke a cigar by the carriage. As I cut the cigar, Roy, the orc bounty hunter, walked by. "Hello, Lord Jack. It's been a while. How have you been, my lord?" he said to me, and I laughed, pulling out another cigar. I gave him one, and he watched how I lit my cigar. He cut his and lit it the same way. "I'm just Jack. You don't need to call me Lord," I told him, and he smiled at me. "It's normal for common folk to call nobles Lord. Do you feel that you're not a noble?" he asked me, and I nodded, saying I was no noble, that the title of Lord was given to me after that summons from the Queen. He laughed and patted my back. "Friend, you were given that title because you earned it. Not many have been given the noble badge like you did," he told me, letting me know that this was an honor, this was a life-changing title. Val and Mila approached us, looking at the stranger they'd never met. "What's this bounty hunter want from you, Lord Jack?" Mila said, getting annoyed by Roy's presence. "Oh, this is Roy. We met when I came here for my summons last month. He's the one who gave me the bag of flat leaves. Be kind to him, you." I said. Both women eased up on Roy. What you gave Jack here has made him happy. Thank you now, Lord Jack. We need to get moving again. Val said to me, getting me into the carriage. I nodded and said goodbye to Roy. I'll see you again, my friend. We have some stuff to discuss, I told Roy and smiled, shaking my hand. I got into the carriage again, and we were off. I sat silent for hours until we reached the gates in Dragonius. There, like before, we were stopped by the guards. This time around, though, they didn't mess with me. They saluted me, and we made our way to the castle. I became restless, so I crawled to the driver's seat. The man driving saw me and looked startled. My lord, are you okay? Is there something I can do for you? He asked, and I laughed. I'm fine, sir. I'm just feeling cramped being stuck back there. I told him, and he nodded. We chatted until we came to the castle's front gate. I saw that Lars was waiting for us. I smiled at him as he looked up at me. Lord Jack, how are you doing? He said in a happy tone. He had a huge smile. I'm doing good, Prince Lars. How's the family? I said back to him, getting down from the carriage. He held out his hand, and I shook it, understanding how strong this dragon man was. He told me a bit of the summons, but he held off on what would be said in my meeting with Queen Selena. Val and Mila looked surprised that I was chatting with Prince Lars like old friends. Lars and I talked about life and what I was up to. Val and Mila stayed behind us, letting us talk without interruption. Then, out of nowhere, Lars said, My aunt has been more lively since she heard you were going to join her on this trip. I smiled, but I didn't comment on that. Well, this trip might be a change for the better, I said, talking more about the treaty. Prince Lars had me follow him to the same waiting area as last time. But this time, I didn't get the same glare and looks as before. Everyone understands why I was here. I looked out to the garden like last time to see if Sanya was coming. But this time, the butler came around the corner. I smiled and opened the door for him. Lord Jack, thank you. Queen Selina and Princess Sanya are waiting in the throne room, he said, having me go out the door first. We walked across the garden to the throne room. Lord Jack, it's good to see you, Queen Selina said loudly from across the room. I bowed closer. It's good to see you and Princess Sanya again. How's life in the city been? I asked her, and she shook her head. We've had another human raid on a nearby village. Both sides of that battle lost a lot of men and women. That's why this treaty was called. She told me, and I nodded, understanding the situation. Why did you call for me then? I asked, and Queen Selina told me I was meant to bring my human side to this treaty and show the humans that they could live with the non-humans just fine. My arms relaxed, but she said, You are also the only one protecting the people going with you, she said, smiling as Mila and Val were brought in. Those two came with you, I'm guessing under Charlotte's request, she asked, and both nodded. Queen Selina sighed. Good, then we have a capable guard corps for this treaty, she said, and then she told us the details and treaty requests, normal stuff like trade routes and job opportunities. They also had things about helping rebuild towns they've both destroyed. For the most part, the treaty was for a ceasefire to finally find peace for both sides. We discussed what I would talk about, starting with my time being imprisoned for no reason, and then discussing the human army attacking an innocent village of vampires. She told me the king who ruled over the human city I was held captive in would be there too. I was concerned about that, but Queen Selina told me it would be okay. Then, just as the conversation was dying, we heard a loud voice from the other side of the room. My wife, how are you feeling today? The deep male voice said. Then I turned to see a giant dragonkin man approaching me. He looked right at me, and then he smelled the air. You must be Jack. I'm King Jean. It's a pleasure to meet you finally, he said, bowing his head. I stopped him and held out a box of my cigars for him. From what my escorts told me, you like flat leaf. I make these by hand to enjoy on my days off. You can have a box, I told the man, and he looked at the box. King Jean opened the box and smelled the cigars. He liked what he smelled and looked right at me. Son, these are fantastic. From the smell alone, they are going to be a treat. He patted my back, and I felt like a kid again. Though I'm 30 years old, these people make me feel younger than I am. Now, my job has been given to me and my two friends. We were allowed to settle and left for the neutral city of Nithelhelm. I could rest in the guest lounge, but that was only temporary. I found a chance to escape the room and smoke one of my cigars. I made my way to the garden. I looked around and sat on a bench overlooking the kingdom. I cut the end of my cigar and lit it slowly. I took a puff and then sat back, expelling the cigar smoke. I could sense eyes watching me. I looked over my head and saw King Jean was behind me. "Could you show me how to smoke these? I'd rather not destroy them, but find out how." He asked me, and I laughed, offering a seat next to me. He handed me his cigar, and I showed him where to cut it and how to light it. He watched closely, then took a puff as I did. He breathed through his nose and then smiled. "Kid, you are one hell of a flat-leaf stick maker." He praised me. I smiled, but I said back to him, "I just did what the cigar makers in my world did. It took me a lot of tries and failures to make them decent." I told him. He listened to my stories and finished his cigar. I still had a while to go, but he stayed with me and asked me a question. "I heard about what happened with the humans and you. Do you truly hate them, or see why they treated you like they did?" He looked at me, and I let out a deep sigh. "Kind of, but after being in that cell for months, being accused of something I'm not, it drove me to hate them more with each passing night. I'm not an angry person, or I don't think I am. Anyone would understand the unwillingness to trust humans after what I went through.